You are listening to Conversations with the Citizen.
Hi, and welcome to another week of Get Your House in Order. I'm your host, Bren Sheriff. The information provided on this podcast is not intended to be legal advice, but to inform you of the importance of getting your house in order by making a plan that will establish your legacy for the protection of you and your family. If you need help in any area that we discuss during this podcast, you can give me a call at 773-817-0601. We encourage you to contact a professional of your choice who can answer your specific questions that you may have. And today, we have with us famed star of both stage and screen, the unbeatable and irrepeatable Deanous Reid. And we just call him Dean because he is certainly a young man that is up and coming. Dean, I believe that you are on the board of directors of the Chicago Association of Realtors. Yes. You're also on the board of directors of the Dearborn Real Estate Board, which makes you a realtist and not a realtor.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
For those of you that don't know, the Dearborn Real Estate Board is the oldest professional association of real estate professionals. I think, what is it, 80 something years old?
Yes, Dearborn was established in 1941.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting on up there.
Yeah,
all right.
Before the
And the way that I know Dean is from the NAACP. Dean is the third vice president of the National Association for the Advancement of Certain People. And he also happens to be the chair of the Housing Committee for the Chicago South Side NAACP. And with all of this, how do you get anything done, young man?
Calendar.
Nothing
happens if it's not on the calendar.
If it's not on the calendar.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know that you have those organizational skills, because you certainly could not be as effective if you did not have good organizational skills. And I applaud you. The reason I wanted to bring you on today, you and I have had discussions about the national study that NAREB did, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and it talked about the home ownership, real estate ownership of African Americans, specifically for homes. Tell us a little bit about that. What are we ahead or behind where our ownership percentages had been?
Currently, the SHEBA report, which is it's called SHEBA, it's the acronym for State of Housing in Black America report. It is done annually by the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which we call NAREB.
Yes.
That stat right now stands at the black home ownership rate is at about 46%, compared to the white home ownership rate, which is at about 73%.
And isn't that 43% less than it had been in the 80s? Isn't that closer to what it had been in the 70s?
It's correct. When they started tracking the actual percentage, it hadn't moved much since the 1968 when they actually started tracking, and it was hovering around 46%, 45, 46%.
Yes. As a realtist, because I'm not going to call you a realtor.
I'm both.
I know you're both.
Mm-hmm.
But as a realtist, what is the attitude of the young people or that why do you think they're not buying homes now?
It could be a number of things. When I'm seeing the younger demographic, they are interested in home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The information that they are looking for, I think that it needs to be more accessible. They are looking at Instagram, that demographic, 30s and in the late 20s and 30s. They tend to use Instagram for their news. They don't look at TV. They're not, on the radios and things like that, like those forms of communication. Instagram is where they get the news. So the information to help them make the decision to purchase a home or even how to get started has to be tailored to them. And I think that's where we kind of lose the interest for the younger demographic.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. As you know, the name of the column that I write and the name of this program is Get Your House in Order. And one of the reasons that I started this is because I had some alarming statistics. I live in the South Shore area, and at one time, 85% of the single-family homes in South Shore were owner occupied. Now it's 23%. That is a huge difference. What happened to the passing of the homes down? Where if grandmother owned it or your parents owned it, those homes would then be the homes of, their children or their grandchildren. Do you see that happening? Are there provisions? Are you getting listings of these older homes because the children or grandchildren don't want them?
Yes, it's happening quite a bit. There's different situations in which you get the listing. It would be like one, for instance, would be if the grandmother or grandfather or pass away and there's no estate plan in place, which we're coming up against quite a bit, where the heirs to the estate don't really know what to do with the property. In most cases, they're not interested in keeping it, and some that have interest in the property are not in a position to purchase the property. So I do see it quite a bit, and it's just, I think the most important piece is the estate planning piece, where you can pass the property to the next heir through the estate plan. But that's a conversation that we need to have more of, on how to pass the property from generation to generation. You also need to prepare the next generation to be able to receive the property. If it's something that's just dropped on them and they don't understand the dynamics of owning a home or what to do with a house, it could be overwhelming. So that's just something that we definitely need to have more of a conversation about.
And that's what I bring up in my column on many occasions. And I always go back to scripture for my base. For lack of knowledge, my people perish. And this non-transference of assets, and I hear everyone talk about, we want generational wealth. Is this one of the first steps or one of the most important factors in the creation of generational wealth?
Yes, it is. That is the foundation. When you look at the wealth of families in America, especially the most prominent ones, you would see real estate at the foundation. Mm-hmm. And I just got a quick story that I got a kind of an epiphany mm-hmm. when I saw. I went to visit the 1901 project down on the west side.
Yes.
They have a office at the United Center where they have the renderings of what is to be.
Yes.
And it starts around the United Center, and it circles the United Center. That United Center is owned by two families, the Reinsdorf family and the Wirtz family.
Yes.
The Wirtz family owns the Chicago Blackhawks. Reinsdorf owns the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago White Sox. So this plan was basically like 20 years in the making. They assembled all of the parcels around the United Center, and when they had the complete lot, that's when they started to plan for getting the 1901 project together. It didn't happen overnight. This was decades of planning.
Yes.
So when you're looking at the presentation, when I was looking at the presentation, and she only mentioned those two families. So I asked her, I said, well, who owns the land around the United Center? I know they own the United Center, but who owns the land around it? They own it, just those two families.
Yeah.
So the plan for that area, they have a lot of residential units coming on about 5,000 units. They have a hotel that's going to be built there with 700 rooms. They have a mid-concert venue that seats 6,000. That's going to be just all in walking distance within each other. So when you see that they had the foresight that this is going to be needed in this area, the question came up. You had a room full of realtors. You know, what are the units going to be sold for? And none of the units are going to be for sale. They're going to all be rentals. They're not going to have any condos or anything like that. So we're talking about 5,000 rental units. We got a hotel with 700 rooms. We have a concert venue that seats 6,000 people. And this land that it sits on is owned by two families.
Ching,
That's
ching.
generational wealth right there.
Ching, ching.
You
Ching,
say
ching.
money,
Ching, ching.
Yes. That's when I had the epiphany about this. That right there is the playbook
Yeah.
to creating
And
generational wealth.
that will go on and continue to create revenue because they're rental units. That is going to be, monthly income. Generational wealth was created
Yes.
because people had the vision of the importance. And they used to have a statement, God ain't making no more dirt.
No.
And I think you probably heard that. I don't know, I might be showing my age.
No, forget
Yeah,
Friday. Yes.
yeah. God ain't making no more dirt. And so because God makes more fur coats, more gold chains, more Hummers and all of the highfalutin other vehicles, what do you think, or do you have any insight into why those same dollars are not, that are spent on depreciating assets, are not spent on appreciating assets? And can you give an example? Let's say if you have a Range Rover and you've paid $100,000, let's say, for one of the top end Range Rovers, versus $100,000. Did I say $100? I meant 100,000. Okay. Versus $100,000 on a piece of real estate. Can you give me a scenario of what happens to that $100,000 over a period of time?
Yes. When you go with the Range Rover scenario, that product, because it's not an asset, that's a liability, it depreciates. As soon as you drive it to the first stoplight, the $100,000 car is no longer worth $100,000.
Wow.
As soon as you drive it off.
Wow.
If you try to return that car the next day, they will not give you $100,000.
Wow.
So that's what's called a depreciating asset.
Okay.
And it does not pay you. You pay to have it.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite side of the coin is the $100,000 property. where you invest $100,000 and you benefit from appreciation, which that value from 100,000 goes to 110 over years, appreciates in value. And if it's a multi-unit property, you can actually benefit from extra income that comes from the property that property will pay you instead of you paying for it. But that's the end goal. You know, you have to educate the person on, do I want a appreciating asset that I'm looking, you have to have some patience, one, and you have to have some foresight, you know, to be in that situation. We're in an age now where we want instant gratification. We want that Porsche and we want the gold chains and all these depreciating assets. Well, real estate, you know, you have to wait. It's a patience game, but it's a long-term game. You know, that's the thought process has to be for whatever way you want to go. But you know, I'm really I get kind of go down a rabbit hole with the either or.
I have a lot of old school sayings, and one of the things that was talked about in my family is that houses buy cars, cars don't buy houses. So what you're talking about is the appreciation of that property is something that will generate a greater value that will help you to more easily afford a vehicle.
Yes.
And that is where we should be. A lot of people, and I heard you say having income property, a lot of people are not aware, or some people are not aware, that if you say that you want to buy a single family home, how many units can that single family, under the HUD guidelines, how many units could you possibly purchase and still fall within that non-commercial property where it's a single family home?
You can purchase up to 4 units. You can have your single family house, but you can also go from the 2 flat, the 3 flat to 4. So you can and it's the same process up to 4 units.
So when you instead of having a single family home where you have to defer all of the expense, do you have any suggestions for perhaps first-time buyers?
Yes. And if I'm speaking from experience, if I had to do it all over again, I would never have bought a single family home. You definitely want to maximize the opportunity to buy a multi-unit property because it's making you an investor. And the process is, you go through the process as a homeowner. You take advantage of the homeowner perks, but it is instantly making you an investor. And you buy the 2 flat or the 3 flat, you can still use FHA, which is the lending product where you put down 3.5% on the 3.5% down payment. The taxes are pretty lower because you're going in as an owner occupant versus an investor. Those are 2 different things. Well, taxes right now is definitely something we need to look at when we're making a purchase, especially in the south suburbs. But just going in, maximize that I can buy an income producing property, and I go through the same process as if I bought this one house that's not going to produce income.
And that, to me, is the difference between being successful and being in a strain or a struggle. The taxes that you were talking about, we at the NAACP are getting ready to educate the public on how taxes work. And that education, give me an insight, because you gave a cautionary about buying and looking at taxes before purchasing in the, particularly the southern suburbs. Tell me what is going on in the southern suburbs and why do you think it's happening? Or do you have any insight into that?
So this last assessment, was it last year? The last year's assessment for the south suburbs and west suburbs actually hit those areas really hard, where they had significant increase in the tax bills, the real estate tax bills. There's a lot of conversation about why that'll take us in a whole different direction, but how that affects those homeowners out there is it significantly increases their monthly payment. You have homeowners that are used to a certain fixed payment every month for years, and then when you have this significant increase in taxes, that's a lifestyle change, and you can easily hear people that say their mortgage payments double because of the tax increase.
Wow.
Yeah, easily. And the concern is the seniors that's on fixed income that was not ready for this type of impact on their budget. That I'm hearing that foreclosure rates are starting to tick up in those areas. There's just a lot of impact that those increases are having on those homeowners in those areas.
Is there any relief? Are there any programs or anything that individuals that have been adversely affected by the increase in taxes, are there any programs or is there any information that they might look into that might help ameliorate some of that?
I've heard the treasurer's office had created some kind of relief, which was they were allowing the homeowners to spread out the payment on the taxes. Mm-hmm. I've heard that. That's fine if you don't have a mortgage.
Okay.
But what do you do for the person that has a mortgage that's escrowed, and the mortgage company has already paid the taxes, and they just have to make up that shortage in their escrow account? It does not help them. There's another program I think Cook County is working on or has implemented already that is going to help with relief in those areas to ease the blow of the impact of that tax increase. I've kind of heard about it. I haven't gotten it in front of me to kind of read it, but I did hear that Cook County was working on something to add some relief to those homeowners.
I know that I've spoken with some individuals, and as you know, I do the financial planning and estate planning, and I am shocked when I see individuals that live in a property and don't even take their homestead exemptions, or the seniors that don't take their senior exemption. And I'm not talking about the senior freeze. They are two different types of programs that could help lower their expense. So would you suggest if they wanted to apply for either of those exemptions, how would a person go about doing that? What governmental office would they go to?
For the tax bills, they would first want to get a hold of the tax bill. You can get that from the treasurer's website. You can go on the Cook County Assessor's website as well to get a copy of your taxes. And if you don't quite know what's happening with the taxes, you can reach out to a real estate professional that can kind of walk you through what's going on with the taxes. The assessor's office, I'm sure, would help you understand where you are with the tax bill as well, to kind of go over what the numbers are and what they mean. But the main thing is you want to get the tax bill to look at your
Assessment.
your assessment, but I forget. I'm drawing a blank.
Your
on that.
your taxable.
Your exemptions. I'm sorry.
Oh, your exemptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to see what
Yes.
exemptions you
Okay.
have on your tax bill.
Yes.
That's the important thing
Yes.
because that's the way you know if you're getting taken advantage of the most that you can. So if you're not a senior, you will, and you own the home and you live in it, you would get the homestead exemption. And then if you're a senior, you get the senior exemption. And then it's at a certain point, I think it's income related where you get the freeze.
Yes.
So those are 3 levels of savings that you can get depending on your situation.
Right. And I think that that is good advice. And so if they needed to find out, get the tax bill, the tax bill would clearly state what their exemptions are, if there are any, and if they're not. If you own the home, you're living in it, you are entitled to a homeowner's. If you own the home, you live in it, and you're a senior, you're entitled to the seniors, which is a little bit more than the standard homeowner's exemption. And then if you are a senior with a certain income level, then you're entitled to the senior exemption and the senior freeze.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. And that can all be done through calling a real estate professional, such as yourself,
Yes.
that would
Yeah.
give them direction and guidance.
Yes.
Or they can call either the Cook County Treasurer's Office, or the Cook County Assessor's Office.
That's correct.
Wonderful. There are, I'd say, questions that some people don't even know to ask. And you brought this up, or don't know how to address. You brought this up a little earlier, and perhaps this is a time for us to talk about how do you pass on real estate. At this point, for those that live in Cook County, one of the easiest ways to set up a process, or set up, a process for your property to be passed on, there's an instrument that the county's assessor's office, county clerk's office provides. Give us a little insight into what the title of that is and what it will do.
That instrument is called the transfer upon death instrument, and the nickname for it is TODI, T-O-D-I. So if you hear someone say TODI, that's what they're referring to, the transfer upon death instrument. It's the easiest way to have the direction of where the property would go upon your death. And what it is, I think it's about 3 pages, and you put the property information down and the beneficiaries that would be entitled to the property once you're gone, and the percentage that they get. When you do that, you record that document with the recorder of deeds, so it's tied to your title. So when it does come up, they know that there is a transfer upon death instrument recorded, and then they have a list of beneficiaries to pass the property to. That is the easiest way to pass the property generation to generation, like we spoke on before. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when you talk about estate planning.
Yes. And when they do this, there is a fee, a very nominal fee for filing or recording this with the clerk's office, and a lot less than the preparation of a will, and it will ease that issue that we have currently, where we are having individuals living in homes that belong to their deceased relatives, but they're not untitled. Have you ever seen that occur? Are you familiar with that phenomenon?
I haven't had one where someone was living in it, but I just helped someone sell a state property that their mom had, and they had I don't know. I thought initially it was like one other heir, but then it ended up being a lot more. And there's a process to that. So they didn't live in the home, but they needed to sell it because it was just sitting there. And what people don't understand is they think the home automatically goes to them without a estate plan. It's a process to it, even if you don't. And probate is one. You know, you go through the probate process, and if you are not clear on how the process works, it can be very expensive to do that. And a lot of times you get caught in the sibling fighting, and the only one that wins in that situation is the attorney, because they're billing you by the hour, and 1 hour could be 10 minutes.
Yes.
So every time you text an attorney or you call them, and if it's not even a whole hour, that's an hour that they're billing you for. And I had to have a conversation with this family, even though they didn't want to be in the same room with each other. But I had to explain, look, for this right here to happen and not cost you more and more, we have to get along. And if you all want to go through me to talk, that's fine. But I'm letting you know, every time we talk and email this attorney, the meter is running. So they have to be conscious of that. You know, they're caught up in the family situation, and I get it. But I'm outside of it, so I'm not caught up in it. But it's my job to say, okay, listen, this is what's happening here, because this can get out of control, and at a certain point, it's just not worth it. You know, when you're looking at the bills that incurs, it can be quite expensive.
Yeah. And so therefore, any proceeds that anyone would get from it, these attorney fees and other accumulated fees for the time delays or the arguments or the dissension or whatever, comes out of the proceeds of the sale.
Yeah.
So everybody is not happy.
No.
Yeah, everyone is not happy.
Yeah. So it's best to bring that up at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they bring it to me, you know, let them know this is how this works. And I have done a transaction that didn't have an estate plan, and we didn't have to go to probate. I just closed that one like last week, where we had just all of the siblings had to agree, and it's a certain process that you take.
Was it an affidavit of heirship?
I believe that's what it was, through the title.
Yeah,
and we didn't have
affidavit
to go through that process. It was just having an attorney that understands how it works, and that helps.
Yeah. And that was probably that property, the deceased had been dead for a period of time.
A couple of years.
That's what happens. That's how you're able to avoid probate with the affidavit of heirship. There has to be I think it used to be 5 years, and you can get an affidavit of heirship, which makes it a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and a lot cheaper.
Yes.
A lot cheaper. One of the things that I know does happen, and I'd like you to caution people, if in fact someone lives in the home and they are not yet on title, they don't own the home, the deceased person owns the home. I call these legacy homes. So the deceased person is still entitled, the occupants are not. What happens if the roof goes, if the heating plant goes, if the back porch falls, if, you know, what usually happens to those properties where that happens?
At some point, it'll be one of the properties you see that's boarded up, because the occupants cannot make any insurance claims because they don't own it. They're not the owner to fix those issues. And it's just a matter of time before the properties just end up one of the vacant properties that you see on certain blocks, and you wonder why it's sitting there so long, and why is it boarded, why is anyone doing anything, because it's stuck in limbo. It's like what they call the shadow inventory, that deceased people, they have these properties, but there's no estate plan, and that these properties sit here because no one knows exactly how to deal with it.
And if in fact there had been an estate plan, tell me what the flip side of that would have been. If there had been an estate plan and that relative was untitled and they did need a new roof, or they did need a new heating plant, or they did need to have money for repairing of the back porch, what would their options have been?
Well, they'll be able to take the homeowner's position. They'll be able to qualify for financing if need be, because they are the legal owners at that point, because the estate shifted the property ownership from the deceased to them. They have a lot more legal options to exercise, because they become the legal owners through the estate plan.
And so they're able to borrow, take what I call busting the bucks from the bricks and the sticks, to be able to afford those repairs or pay for those repairs that occur. That is, would you think that, if nothing else, is one of the key reasons? Because when the person makes their transition, the property is worth something. And appreciating assets generally appreciate. So it should be appreciating, it should be increasing in value as time goes on, except for lack of maintenance.
Right. Deferred maintenance.
Deferred maintenance, then it would decrease. So estate planning keeps your money in your pocket and accessible. Is that maybe a way that we could look at that?
That is correct. Yes,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have learned several things from you this afternoon. One, we have talked about the exemptions. Oh, I know. With these individuals, and suppose they look and they see that their exemptions they've got their appropriate exemptions, but they say, wow, I'm paying $5,000 and my neighbor said they're only paying $3,000 and we've got the same kind of house. Do they have any options?
In taxes?
In taxes?
Okay. Yes, they have the option to appeal the tax, the last year's tax bill, because we pay in arrears. They can appeal it. What they would do is put it's a couple of forms that you fill out to the assessor, and you appeal your tax bill. And what that does is just have the assessor look into first why the variation in the taxes from on that small area. They will look into that, and then just look at the values of the properties that's sold in the area to see where the difference is. You may have like a newer home that's sold for a lot more than when, a couple of years later than when they purchased. That could be the difference, but they would definitely look into it and make the correction, which is by a certificate of error. That's when they issue that.
Is that given by the assessor, or is that from the Board of Appeal? How does that process go?
It could be either or.
Okay.
It could come from if the assessor grants the appeal, it can come straight from the assessor. But if the assessor does not agree with the appeal or denies if the assessor denies the appeal, then you could take it one step further to the Board of Review and have the Board of Review look at the numbers, and you can get possibly get the certificate of error from the Board of Review. That's the second step if you don't get it on first.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you have certainly been a source of enlightenment for many of us, and I really appreciate you coming with us this afternoon, please give your name and your phone number in case people might want to get in contact.
Now I would like to say thank you for having me on the show. It was
You're welcome.
definitely enlightening for both of us. My name is Deanous Reid. I am a real estate broker with FJ Williams Realty, and my phone number is 773-405-8628, and you can reach me at DeanousReid.com.
Thank you so very much, Dean.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
And thank you for joining me and my guest. We look for you next week for Get Your House in Order.
Remember to make plans to join us again next week for Conversations with the Citizen, the place where